There are people in this world who do horrible things to other people, and they're able to do that because they are close to us, they are trusted, and they are loved. But they shatter that by resorting to abuse, sexual abuse, violence, and that has a profound impact on their victims. My guest today is Michelle Manders, who's going to share her story with us of surviving domestic abuse and sexual abuse. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sinta. I feel really honored to be able to share my story, and I really hope that it encourages some people to just hang in there and trust that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, indeed, there is. So, Michelle, just jump in and tell us your story. Where did it start?
Well, Sinta, it actually started for me when I was in my mother's womb. She did it was an unwanted pregnancy.
Mhm.
She had tried to abort me, and that didn't work. And then when I was 9 months old, she abandoned me. My father found me in the apartment by myself, apparently screaming my lungs out at 9 months old. And my dad was also not in a position to look after me. So I was given to his sister, my godmother, my aunt. And she and her husband raised me. So I called them mom and dad because they were the only parents that I knew. But my biological father was still in my life. And my my biological mother was in and out of my life, which I felt really disrupted me in the most terrible ways, because she remarried and she had other children. So I automatically felt I was the reject, because my half brother and sister got to be raised by her and I was the one that was thrown away. So that abandonment at such a young age, and I believe an imprint on my consciousness in utero also impacted me on a psychological and emotional level as well. And there's a whole lot of little details sort of in that which my aunt told me about that went down with my biological mother. Those also really programmed a lot of things into my psyche that stayed with me, hung with me, and really impacted me as well. So although I was adopted within my paternal family, I was still felt like I was the black sheep of the family kind of thing. It's like nothing really fit. Then there was a lot of little things that happened, and at the age of 10, I was 10 years old. My mom, who was my godmother, she got very, very ill. And she had mental illness issues. She also had a drinking problem. And at the age of 10, my childhood ended, because I then had to take over taking care of my adopted brother, who was 4.5 years younger than me. I had to start cooking, cleaning the house. And when she came back, she had a burst peptic ulcer. And when she came back from hospital, her mental instability was even more intense. The drinking really started up again. So she would, it was a very warped relationship in that we role reversed at that point, and I became the adult and she became the child. She projected a lot of stuff onto me. She would beat me and then sob her heart out and tell me how much she loved me. She would get drunk and then I would try and sober her up before my dad got home. If I didn't get that right, then my dad would get home and she'd be drunk and there would be vicious fights. And there were occasions where, I'm 10, 11 years old by this stage. And I'll never forget the one night I burnt the potatoes. And my dad had me pinned up against the wall by my throat, screaming at me because I burnt the potatoes, basically. So it's so much in me began to break down even more and more. Then I was having issues at school as well. There was a teacher that couldn't stand my guts for some reason. girls were just really mean to me. So at school and at home, I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. And I did have a friend, and I was 12 years old, standard 6, and I went for a sleepover at her place. And I was in the bathroom, I'd finished having my bath, and I was busy putting my pajamas on, and her father came into the bathroom. And he fondled my breasts. And I froze. I absolutely froze. I did not know what to do. And the thing is, with all my sexual molestation throughout those teenage years, I never breathed a word to anyone because I didn't feel I had anyone that I could speak to. And then you get that warped thing of, well, maybe I did something to deserve this. So I never said anything to my friend, only for me to think later on, if he did that to me, what was he doing to her? You know, maybe that was something that was going on in the household. So that was so shocking for me. I kind of like didn't quite know how to process that. Then I had a school teacher try and molest me as well. I had another girlfriend who was friends of the family. Her brother was in matric, and he was constantly exposing himself to me, trying to fondle me. I had other friends of the family's sons also do the same thing to me, try and have sex with me. And my no never meant no. It was like my no said, okay, go ahead and do whatever you want to do, you know. And more of this, just as I said, it did more and more and more damage as each event played out. And what also happened was, with some of these schoolboys that were trying to get their way with me, not getting their way with me, then started spreading rumors about me. And that really damaged my reputation. So it was kind of like all the popular girls in the school were talking about me. According to everyone, I was the high school's walking mattress, even though I was still a virgin. And I remember at one point thinking to myself, can I get confirmation from a doctor that says I'm still a virgin, that I can shove this under people's noses? But anyway, still kept to myself. But what eventually happened was I started rebelling. The anger inside of me was intense. And at age 15, I actually drank an entire bottle of my mother's Valiums, and it never killed me. I drank a whole bottle of Valium, and it never killed me. My dad found me in a ditch. We lived in Krugersdorp, in like a ditch that the municipality had built to lay pipes or something, and I was hiding in there. And funny enough, I remember that incident, that I was hiding in that ditch as the cars were coming past. Anyway, he picked me up. They gave me mustard water to drink to pump my stomach. But it was like, you know, like they say in Afrikaans, die koel was hierdie kerk. And it was a hectic downward spiral from there. I never started with drugs, but I started smoking cigarettes. Then I did have my first sexual encounter, and that was about 16. And then the next level of my spiral began, where I was numb, I was dead, I was angry, I felt so misunderstood. And throughout this period of time, my mom's mental illness was getting worse and worse. She had numerous mental breakdowns. She would hallucinate. What she would also do at times is take me shopping with her to a clothing store, and she would steal, she would shoplift, but she would shove it under my school dress. So, you know, the programming of, and she would lie profusely. I mean, profusely. So I had been taught lie, steal, you know, all these kinds of things. And as I say, that imprint just stays with you forever. But my self-worth was completely destroyed. As I say, there's so many fine details that I can't go into here because we don't have the time. But, you know, just if there are people that are listening to my story, to understand that, you know, it's not that you are bad or rotten. These are things that people are doing to you which harm you, damage you. It creates a psychological shift that just sort of goes into a continuous downward spiral as each event happens. And the more you bottle it up, the more you try and swallow it, the more damage it does. So then I also started getting into physical fights with girls at school, very disrespectful to my teachers. And then at my birthday's in January, so I had just turned, on the 4th of January, so it's beginning of January, I just turned 17, and I'd had enough of all the abuse going on at home. My dad was also just angry all the time, and I was constantly being belittled by them, that I would never amount to anything. I'm so useless because I was doing so badly at school. So I'd gotten to the point where I can't live with this anymore. And I ran away from home. And back in those days, where were we? I mean, gosh, that was sort of almost towards the end of the 80s. I think it was 86 or 87. I ran away to Hillbrow, and I did have some people help me to run, but I had to find work because now, you know, I've got to survive. And I had gone to a number of different shops to see if I could get a job as a sales lady. Anyway, there was an ad in a paper, and it was ad for young ladies to escort businessmen to parties and functions and events. I went for the interview, got the job. I was very great. I was very happy. Now I've got the job, got my first date, that and I had to accompany this guy, and went along. And afterwards, there was dessert, and I was horrified because I had no idea that it meant sex as well. So that was another level of a rape. And then he threw money at me. And as I say, I was devastated because I didn't know that this was what was going to happen. And there, I think something really snapped in me. And I carried on doing it for about another 6 months. And the shame, the self-hatred, the emotions that were galvanized in me were so intense that I then started using drugs. It was mainly smoking marijuana, and I functioned on slimming tablets, which in those days were full of ephedrine. So it was in the morning, literally taking 7 of these tablets at a time, which would put me on such a high that I would be able to do what I had to do. And then I would smoke marijuana to then bring myself down. I would go to nightclubs just to dance the pain away, because that was one of my escapes. And at that point, I met my first husband. And it all happened very quickly. He did not know that I was working as an escort, but when he found out, and I was actually, I said, I can't do, I said to myself, I can't do this anymore. And I was looking for a job, and I found a job as a sales lady, getting out of the escorting to now do this job. And kind of like, well, you would never need to know. Anyway, he did find out, and he beat the daylights out of me. Sure. Now, you would say, for goodness sake, why would you even stay in that relationship if the very first thing he does to you is beat the snot out of you and you stayed with him? But that is part of the damage that was done. It's like, I deserve this. I'm such a bad person. I've done such bad things. You deserve it. And the twisted thing is, I was head over heels in love with him. So, you know, Sinta, there's so many crazy thoughts and psychological gosh, I don't even know what to call it, paradigms that are playing out on that, in that space, you know. And I fell pregnant as well. And I was very happy about it because I so badly wanted a baby. Fell pregnant. He then got called up to the army. In those days, they still had to do their military training. I then had to go back home to stay at my parents' home while he was in the army because now I was pregnant. And
Michelle, how old were you at this time?
I was 19 at that
19.
stage.
Okay.
So well, I was 18 actually, because I turned 19 in the January and my son was born in the February. So ran away at 17. It was a year in Hillbrow, and I'd met my first husband towards the end of that year. And then 18 and then 19 gave birth shortly after my 19th birthday. And I stayed with him for 9 years. And in those 9 years, he would beat me, apologize, beat me, apologize. It was the same pattern with my mother. Beat me, cry, I love you, I'm so sorry, you know, be okay for a month or two, and then beat me, do the same thing. But he was cheating on me a lot. There was a lot of infidelity in the marriage. And every time I called him out on it, he would turn the tables on me. I mean, there's one night he locked me in the bedroom with a gun to my head, insisting that I admit to him I was having an affair, and I wasn't. I wasn't. So there was a lot also more psychological, mental, verbal abuse that I experienced. And then towards the end of our marriage, there was a guy who kind of like, you know, that proverbial thing, he gave me the attention, he did this, he did that, and I did have an affair. And I was like, you know what? I constantly get beat up and accused of having an affair. I mean, it's going to make no difference now if I do it, because, you know, it is what it is. And in actual fact, that affair gave me the confidence in a way to actually walk away from the marriage and not go back. Because believe me, I'd left, I don't know how many times, but I always flipped and went back, you know, and that always fascinated me later on, when I was like, what was it that kept me going back? You know, it was like something there that I just ended up always going back to him. The sad thing is that my son witnessed a lot of the abuse. He was never abused, but he witnessed his father screaming at me, shouting at me, beating me. And that also, in a way, propelled me to get out of the marriage, so that it wouldn't be something that he would repeat. So yeah, I got out of it, and then I moved to White River, and that was where I met my second husband. And I had 3 children with him, a son, and then I had twins, a girl and a boy. And he never verbally abused me, but what he did was he left it up to me to earn all the money. So he was an artist, and there would be occasions where he would sell some of his sculptures and he would get like a fat chunk of money in. But, you know, 90% of the time there was no income. And that also did a lot to me in terms of having to wear the pants in the house. I've now got 4 children, twins, and it felt like he was not doing anything to help me to keep, you know, the wheels turning on the factory. So that did another level of damage, where working my backside off, taking care of kids, earning the money, and I lost absolutely all respect for him. So in that marriage, also 9 years I stuck with him. In that marriage, there was a lot of verbal abuse, fighting. When I divorced him, I was single for quite a while. But there I started experiencing very twisted encounters with men. And let me just say, during the 9-year marriage to my first husband, I always had male work colleagues, bosses, clients, all coming after me sexually. And that, I don't even know what words to use, Sinta, because it was so twisted and so messed up. And how at times you do just give yourself over to that because of that psychological imprinting. It's like sex equals love. So I want love. I so desperately want to be loved. And you know, it was, I knew, because of, you know, as a youngster, my looks and, you know, the slim figure and all of that, that was a big attraction for the men. But I kind of like had to put that out the way because they were telling me they love me and I'm so amazing and I'm so this and I'm so that. And I wanted that so desperately. I wanted to be acknowledged and validated and be someone's number one, be the apple of someone's eye, where I'm just the world to them. And men use that line all the time. And I fell for it so many times. And it was ridiculous. And I would get so angry with myself that I would fall for that every time because I knew it was just a line. But again, there's that dichotomy that plays out where you know, but you still act on it. You know what I mean? So then, you know, the other encounters with men in my sort of single time before I met my current husband, who I've known for 18 years, and we've been together almost 15 years, married 11 years. So I broke the pattern. This one's sticking, an amazing man. It was that a constant cycle of men doing the same thing. My no never meant no. And what also happened to me at age 17 when I ran away from home, I also had my first experience where I call it, I was orally raped. I never knew what oral sex was, and that was my first experience. And it was, I think that did a huge amount of damage as well, with that whole encounter and what this man actually did to me. And also during that time where at 17, when I'd ran away from home, one of the girls I'd made friends with, she said, come and stay with me and my dad until you get your own place, which I did. But her dad raped me. He sodomized me, and it was also, oh gosh, just such another twisted situation. So like I say, Cynthia, there's so many experiences that I had, trying to kind of like condense it into the short space of time. So that's kind of like the gist of it. As I say, there's a lot of details that I've left out, but there you have it.
Michelle, what a life. I want to just take a moment and acknowledge to you the tremendous amount of abuse that you have suffered. And the shocking number of abusive people that you were exposed to. It's incredible. And it's so sad that you actually, it started in utero, as you said. You literally came into this world fighting for your dignity. So I wanted to acknowledge that. It's terrible. And I know, because this is what I work with every day, I know the impact that has. And you've mentioned a couple of times as you were sharing your story, the dynamics that play out, the imprints that's made on us as children, the beliefs we take on about ourselves, and the behavioral patterns that we resort to merely as a means to cope and to survive and to keep ourselves safe in some kind of, twisted is a word you use, some kind of weird way we manage to keep ourselves a little bit safe in the chaos. It's absolutely incredible. What a story. you have shared so many incidents and experiences that so many women out there go through. And I'm not saying that to minimize your experience. I'm saying to impress on everybody who's going to watch this how rife it is, how common domestic violence is, how common sexual abuse is. And like I said in the beginning, how it happens with the people that are close to us, the ones we trust, the ones we love. It's absolutely shocking. It's a tragedy that that this sort of thing happens. So, yeah.
And I was also, I've just remembered now, I was raped by a policeman as well, actually not a policeman, a detective, a white man detective, where there was people that I was friends with, and this is all during that year that I ran away from home when I was 17. This all happened while I was 17. They were heavily involved in drugs, and they'd asked me if I would point out these people, and this detective was interviewing me and then decided, well, while we're at it, let me just rape you.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So there again, you know, this is a policeman. It's the law. These are the ones you're supposed to trust that'll be there for you when bad things happen. Yet they are also the perpetrators of these, you know, twisted, sordid experiences.
And that again is not uncommon.
Yeah.
So Michelle, there's so many things we can talk about, but let me start with the one thing you've mentioned yourself. And it's a question on everybody's lips. Why do you stay in such a situation? Why do you stay in such a marriage? And there isn't really one answer for that. It's very complicated. It's very complex with everything that plays out. But we stay. People stay in those situations for many reasons. What have you learned? What can you share with us? Why did you stay for many years?
You know, one of the things with my first husband, the one thing that stood out was that, I just love him so much. But the other thing was that he had also said to me on numerous occasions, if I leave, he will kill my whole family. So there were threats. And he did have a firearm. So, and he was Portuguese, and they had all their connections that, you know, things could go down, which I was scared about. The other thing was I didn't have the finances to leave. I had a son. I was scared he was going to take my son away from me. So this warped sense of love, which it wasn't, mixed with fear, insecurity, low self-worth, not believing I could do any better than him. Where do I go? Now, I know with a lot of, sorry, I'm on my phone because my internet connection was playing up. I know with a lot of ladies that stay in these kinds of situations, fear and threats are a big part of what keeps them staying. Also lack of finances, nowhere else to go. So it was a combination of a number of those things. I did not know of any safe houses or any places like that. And, you know, the other, again, I use the word twisted. The other crazy twisted thing about this was my grandmother was what I call a legalistic Christian, in the sense that she didn't present God and Jesus to me as they truly are. She painted God as this punishing tyrant that was looking down on you and was going to unleash hell on you for every wrong thing that you did. You had a good angel and a bad angel on your shoulders, and they're whispering in your ear all the time. So that actually created an immense amount of fear in me. And I remember one night, it was a new year, he had beat me up, and I was sitting on the stairs outside in the dark, and I said, God, you know, are you doing this to me because I've been such a slut? Is this my punishment for being the slut that I am? And that's what I believed I was. I believed I was this low life, filthy slut. And that belief that God was punishing me for all the things that happened to me, kind of like, in a way, I said, well, you deserve this. You're never going to get out of it. This is your lot. Suck it up, buttercup, and just deal with it, kind of thing. So there were a number of elements behind the reasons that I stayed in that marriage.
Wow. Talking about the things, the beliefs that we take on about ourselves because of those things that happened to us.
Yeah.
Michelle, you mentioned that you never told a soul about your experiences. And I know, because I specialize in trauma and complex trauma, that having traumatic experiences and being in a position where you can't share it with anybody, which means you don't have support, you don't get anybody to witness your suffering, so to speak, actually compounds the trauma. And that is what eventually makes it complex trauma. The variety of repeated experiences and the fact that you bear it alone or by yourself. Was there ever an adult in your life who knew what was going on, who saw something was wrong, who noticed that something was up with you?
No.
Never.
No.
So you really didn't have anybody you could rely on or could trust with sharing what had happened?
No, not at all. No.
When did you?
Sorry, my mom and dad knew that my first husband, they knew that he was beating me up, but they didn't really do anything about it. It was kind of like, well, you need to do something to get out of this. So it's not like, you know, I had a dad and a brother that would, you know, pull him one side and, you know, give him a taste of his own medicine and just say, listen, this is my daughter, this is my sister. You lay another finger on her, you're going to meet your maker, kind of thing. I never, ever had that kind of support or backup from anyone. It was always me, myself, and I. I have to survive. I have to cope. I've got to do what needs to be done to get out of this and do whatever.
So you were on your own. So literally abandoned at a very young age, and you lived an abandoned life for the most part until your childhood and beyond that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, when in your life, because I'm looking if I can get more or less a timeline. You got married. Your first marriage was for 9 years, so you were in your mid-late 20s, and then you had a second marriage. So you were in your mid-late 30s when you got into your current marriage?
I was, let me see, I've divorced my first husband. I think I was around about 27. Yeah, 27. My second marriage, I think I was 30. And then with my current husband, I met him when I turned 40. And it was only 3 years after I met him. It was 2006 I met him. And then in 2010, we moved in together. So 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I was almost 44 when I was 43, going on 44
Yeah.
when we moved in together, and we've been together ever since.
So you were in your 4th decade of life. When did you finally get the courage, or felt safe enough, or had somebody in your life that you could trust to share your experiences with for the first time?
It was my current husband.
Mm.
He was, I always say, I had to kiss a couple of frogs before my prince came along, and he was the antithesis of all the men that had ever been in my life. And he really went through so much with me, because I poured my heart out to him. It was zero trust, constantly in a state of stress, overanalyzing, overthinking, worrying that at every turn, if his eye flipped it in the wrong direction, that he wanted to sleep with that woman. So he went through so much with me in healing all those broken pieces and building trust in our relationship. And he did that. I mean, always used to say to me, well, you don't believe me. I understand that. I know what you've been through. I'm just going to show you. And that's what he did. So I am with the most amazing man now. I mean, he has never, in all the almost 15, in November, it'll be 15 years that we've been kind of like in a relationship as such. In all those 15 years, he has never given me a single reason to, what's the word, to think that he's doing something that I can't trust. Deceit, lies, none of that. I mean, that's the mind-boggling part of it all, is that I went through all of that, and like now almost halfway to my 40s, here comes, this man. And so I feel I was very, very blessed in that instant where, but he got the full download of, decades of what I went through. But I saw how much he loved me because he stuck through all of that. And I came with 4 kids, me and 4 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What a beautiful story.
Yeah, he is.
Wow. So, Michelle, the next thing I want to ask you is, you've mentioned some of the things that you've experienced. You never told anybody. So all those people that raped you and sexually abused you and beat you up, they all got away with what they did. Nobody
Yep.
was ever prosecuted for what they did because you never told a soul.
No, because I didn't think anyone would believe me. And it was kind of like, because there had been some incidents at home where I was blamed for things that I never did. I would get beatings, punished for things I genuinely did not do. And that was also part of the imprinting, where it's pointless. I'm not going to be believed anyway. No one hears me. If I get seen, but I'm seen either as a punching bag or something that can just be taken and abused and used for whatever they want, So yeah, no, they all got away with it, Sinta, all of them.
That is a tragedy as well, that there is no recourse for a victim like you. Wow. It says a lot about our society. What I find almost unbelievable is that the people that were in your life did not see anything, or if they did, they looked the other way, that nobody stood up for you, that nobody reached out to say, are you okay? Can I help you? That is such a a big question that I want to put out there to our society and our communities. People do look the other way. People don't want to get involved. I can't believe for one moment that people can't see something's wrong. People can't sense something is wrong. Because sometimes, and I'm sure you could probably share stories like that as well. Sometimes when you've been beaten up, there are bruises and scars. And women, and I must also say there are men that are physically abused as well, but we all know that they are mostly women. They get good at hiding those scars, or at hiding away and actually not going out until you are healed, because you don't want to be seen that way. And you also feel protective over the perpetrators. Like you said, there's all kinds of relationship dynamics at play here, but it's such a tremendous thing that nobody in all those years stood up for you.
Yeah. And, you know, they basically just, all they saw was me rebelling, just becoming more and more out of hand, that there's just, she's the problem. It was always, that's why I say it was kind of like everything was always my fault. It was always projected onto me. And one of the things I struggled with for a very long time was that my childhood came to an end at such a young age, where I was expected to take over certain things in the household that a 10-year-old is not emotionally and mentally and even psychologically equipped to step into. And again, that thing of getting into trouble for things that had happened that I was not equipped to handle, or tasks that I was not equipped to carry out. And so, yeah, you know, it's that, again, that word imprinting, Sinta, where for so long, it's kind of like just hammered into you. You are the problem. You are the reject. You are the one that is malfunctioning on all levels. I was not liked in any environment that I was in, from my perspective, because of what I was experiencing. So at home, at school, I had a very few friends, and they were kind of like also the ones that sat at the lunch table at the end of the hall, kind of thing, you know. So I had never ever really been validated in the sense of, you matter. I see you in trouble. I see your rebellious behavior. All of that is actually a cry for help. That is not who you are at your core. There's something going on here. What is going on? I think if I'd had something like that, I would have probably broken down and said, listen, all of this is happening to me. But I'd already been programmed, brainwashed to the point that there is no one. There's no one that's going to back me up. There's no one who's going to support me. Even God's on a mission to take me out because I'm such a bad person. These were all the distinctions and varieties of annihilated self-worth and self-esteem, where you just function on this, I don't even know what to call it. It's, and I don't even think it's a functioning, it's like a mere existing and having to just get through from one day to the next. And it was in actual fact my deep love for my children that kept me from not actually taking drastic measures to kill myself. Because I had suicidal thoughts every day of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Shocking.
Yeah.
Michelle, you have 4 children. Can you tell us how your own lived experience affected, determined how you parented your children?
I've got 3 sons and a daughter, so I became overly cautious with my kids. I was paranoid for them to go anywhere. I had pumped it into my kids' brain, if anyone comes near you and looks at you in a certain way, or their hand moves in a direction towards them, you aim for that crotch and you kick like there's no tomorrow. You bite, you scratch, you scream. It was like, do as much damage as you can, and then tell me what's going on. So I think I was overly forceful in terms of trying to keep them safe, overprotective, putting a lot of restriction on their freedom as such. However, that said, Sinta, my daughter was sexually abused as well. And that for me was devastating, because, and it wasn't a rape where there was penetration. It was her older brother's friend that had molested her and did things to her when she was 6 years old.
Sure.
And that messed, oh my gosh, it was, the hounds of hell came out of me in terms of, you know, confronting that whole situation. So, you know, and the world we live in, Sinta, is just so lost, so warped, so numb to these sexual predators and the whole sexual theme of life. It's become so distorted that the way our children are targeted when it comes to sexual information, I could not protect my children from any of that. And it was at school that my kids were exposed to pornography. I took one of the schools on that my children went to. It was a school here in Johannesburg, and I took the school on that they were allowing mobile phones in classes where boys were sitting together watching pornography in the class while the teacher is teaching, and it was a whole long thing. So I always stood up and fought. I mean, I was known at the schools, that mother, just watch. If you do anything wrong, she's going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. I was that mother. But it didn't make a difference, Sinta, you know, because again, Yara was doing it on my own. I need to protect my children. I need to do this. I need to do that. But most of the other parents were like, la-di-da-di-da, like, you know. So it's, I wish I could find the words to really try and express what I'm saying here. It's just the world has spiraled into such a cesspool of disregard and numbness, and not my circus, not my monkeys. If it's not affecting me, it doesn't matter. And I think that is one of the serious infections in society today. It's like, what do you call it? Like a sepsis in society when no one cares anymore. It's all this self-absorbed, what's going on in my world is the only thing that matters. And you're going through something, oh, shame. All right, but anyway, I'm orphaned, and that's it. And like you said, you know, maybe they're seeing stuff is going on and they don't want to get involved, or they don't know how to deal with it, or they're just not seeing it. You know, there's so many reasons for it. But my kids also at one point began to rebel because I was overprotective. I kind of like took it to the opposite extreme in terms of trying to protect them. When they got into their sort of mid-teens, I sat them down and I told them what happened to me. And I said to them, this is why I am so overprotective and so scared for you, because this is what I've been through. I've seen the dark side of this world. I know what's out there, and I know it's only getting worse. And I do not want my babies to go through that. I never want my children to experience anything like that. But it wasn't enough to protect them, because I saw, like they explained to me, I mean, they're now in their 20s. It was like, Mom, we heard what you said, but it's kind of like, we needed to go out into the world and experience things too. But my words always played in the back of their memories. And, you know, they'd never had experiences as insane as mine, but they got backed into corners at points. And, you know, they were terrified in certain aspects, but they always came and spoke to me. They always came and told me what was going on. And then it got to the point where they wouldn't tell me anymore, because they knew Mom was going to go out and fight, and that was just going to put a target on their back.
I
That was
find
the
it,
other side.
I find it so interesting what you're sharing with me, because I relate to it completely. I have 2 sons, and I also had horrid experiences, early childhood, sexual abuse and things. And when I finally shared with them, or let me just take a step back, I was protective of them, and I was determined that they would not be abused on my watch, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I watched them and was with them, and I even had children's books that we read together to teach them about this is my body and how they can say no. And I went to a lot of trouble to make sure that they are educated and aware of protecting themselves and things like that. And I was always aware that I didn't want to make them afraid to go out and live their lives, but equip them so they can protect themselves. And I was very protective. And when you mentioned how you took the school on and things like that, I always refer to myself as having Mama Bear in her cage. Yeah. But if you mess with my kids, Mama Bear comes out, and then there's no end to what I can do. Yeah. And I'm also known as that. And my kids also fondly refer to Mama Bear. You know, it's a joke between the two of us. So I relate so much to what you're saying. And I remember my children are 4 years apart. I shared some of the stuff with the oldest son as it became age appropriate, and then later with the youngest son. It had a profound impact on them also to realize this is their mother's story.
Yeah.
But it was also beautiful in a way that it has helped them to understand me better and to understand my parenting and my behavior better. So it was an enriching experience between us, and solidified a very deep bond and a good relationship of trust between us, even though it was difficult, even though it was challenging at times. So I'm sharing this because I think it's a good thing that parents share their experiences with their children as they grow 100%. Up, as they become old enough to understand it, because it very much makes us who we are.
Yeah. You know, I'm very grateful that I have got an incredibly close relationship with all 4 of my kids. There's a 15-year gap between my eldest son, who's almost 39, and my second son, who's almost 24. And then I've got twins who are 20. But definitely, because I was so open and honest about my past, what makes me tick and why I behave a certain way. Like you said, when it was age appropriate and I knew they could process what I was actually telling them, they've often said they valued so much me sharing all of that, as shameful and heartbreaking as it was, because I was very ashamed to tell them, especially about that escort period. You know, basically, your mother was a prostitute for, you know, that period of time. And the way they took it was, okay, so, you know, And I was not expecting that kind of
judgment.
Yes, that's that. And you know, I'm going to be a grandmother in December, and
Wonderful.
I'm kind of like, it's a little girl, and I'm like, already now grandmama bear is already, she's like
Yes.
standing at the gates there, you
Yeah.
know, how can I do things differently with my granddaughter that I got wrong with my daughter? And I'm so, you know, it's I'm seeing that instinct's already kicking in now, because there's another little one coming in, and it's a girl kind of thing. And you know, I'm saying to Dean then, because my son, my eldest son, lives in Cape Town, and it's like, don't do this, don't do that, don't. I'm like, Michelle, calm down. You
Yes.
know, it's she's not going to be snatched out of her pram. And this is so I found there has been a few triggers there in terms of me wanting that overprotective mama, now grandmama bear, is wanting to step in, and I can't interfere in my child's life to that degree, telling him and his wife what they can and cannot do. But yeah,
It's
it's
such an important thing that we break the cycles in the generations also. Are you
yeah.
aware of anybody in previous generations of your family having similar experiences to yours?
My biological mother, now this is, I mean, talk about a story of restoration. Part of my healing, my success in healing, and my freedom from a lot of the pain and trauma is when I encountered Jesus Christ in his authenticness for the first time, which was about 6 years ago. And in 2019, I had to take care of my dad because my mom, who'd raised me, my adopted mom, she passed away. My dad had 5 different kinds of cancer and dementia, and there was no one to look after him. So my husband and I had to move into my childhood home, and I had to take care of my dad. And I was reunited with my biological mother in 2019. And in kind of like getting, you know, talking to her, things like that, she was raped when she was 14. Her mother, my maternal grandmother, who I never knew, was bipolar, and she was very abusive of my biological mother. She had 5 marriages and 5 divorces. So there was a lot there. She doesn't really like speaking about her past, and I didn't want to push her into things. She had immense shame around what she did to me. And she, you know, she tried to validate it. And it's kind of like, you know what, we've got to forgive, we've got to move on. This is my mother. She then fell and broke her hip in February last year, and she had nowhere to go. And she's now living with me. It's almost 2 years of her living with me, you know. And there was definite abuse in her family, very dysfunctional family as well, in terms of what she shared with me. So I do believe there is things that are carried generationally.
So there's generational trauma there, definitely.
Definitely. And even my aunt, who raised me, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who was her mother, my aunt's mother, and my father's mother, my grandmother treated my aunt very badly. There was a lot of verbal and emotional abuse there. Her boys were the apple of her eyes, and she couldn't stand my mom, which was my aunt. So I also witnessed massive fights between her and my paternal grandmother. So it was always, there was always fighting going on. There was always some kind of violence. That was just my life. It's all I really knew.
Was wow.
Yeah.
Sure. So Michelle, you mentioned that you are healed. tell us about how your life is since you've been on the healing path, and everything is so much different and so much better for you now. What does it mean for you, having shared your story? What does it mean when you say you healed or you healing?
I am free of the guilt and the shame that came with what I did in my past. I have complete peace in knowing that the man who is my husband now, I can trust. It's a stable, solid environment. There's no stress around worrying about where he's at, what he's doing, who he's doing it with. Those things are gone. My identity is no longer in my past. My identity is now in the woman that I have become. I am not, I'm not a slut. I'm not a this, I'm not a that. I have become this woman who is trustworthy. I am loyal to my husband. I have never, ever betrayed him. It's such a safe place. But I'll just pop this in. I have to give all glory to God for this, Sinta, because when I developed an authentic relationship with Jesus Christ himself, which is totally different to what some Christians call Christianity. I believe there's people walking out there that call them Christians that should not be calling themselves Christians, because they're not. And they've done so much damage to people when it comes to hearing Christianity or the name of Jesus Christ or God. But that is who I absolutely give all glory to, because there's transformation and healing that has taken place, that only took place as my relationship with him developed. I went to umpteen psychologists. Oh my gosh, throughout my 20s, my 30s, I went to psychologist after psychologist and nothing changed. But it is all changed. It is all changed now, because I know, because of what Jesus Christ did for us, in God's eyes, I'm seeing as pure and righteous. And when we come into an authentic relationship with him, he forgets all of our sin. So I know my slate has been wiped clean because of the blood of Jesus. I am righteous in God's eyes, and that has given me an incredible amount of peace. It has put to death all those parts of me that haunted me, that ran with me. I mean, for, gosh, I think it was 36 years, Sinta, I was tormented by sleep paralysis. There was a lot of paranormal things that I experienced that were terrifying as well, which I believe these things often happen to people that have been through serious abuse. There are some other things that happen, and all of that eventually stopped. You know, the other thing that also happened to me was in order to get men's eyes off of me, I gained a massive amount of weight, because I just wanted to make myself as ugly and as undesirable as possible. And it didn't help because there was still those things coming, you know. But where I am now, Sinta, it just knowing that there is freedom. There does come a point where your past no longer haunts you. The woman that was raped, slandered, beat up, all of that, she can be put to rest. And you can have a healthy, stable relationship, marriage. Your kids can be okay. Life happens, and there are going to be certain things that they encounter, but life can be good again. You can have the so-called normal life, marriage, children, good job, all those kinds of things. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that is absolutely beautiful. Michelle, can I ask, do you ever, or did you ever grapple with the question, why did all of this happen to me? Why? Why did I have to go through all of that?
Oh, umpteen times. Umpteen times. That was the question that circled my mind more times than I can even imagine. And yes, definitely. The why me was there so often, which is why, I try to take my own life, and why I entertained suicide on a daily basis. That's why I say if it wasn't for my children, I would have been successful in taking myself out a very long time ago. Yeah.
And what would you answer to that? Have you reached an answer or an explanation? Why did you have to go through all of that? Or does it?
In a way, Sinta, I've got to the point where it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
It happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing I can do to change that. So regardless of the reasons where I am now, if we have to look at 57-year-old Michelle, that all happened, but there is good that came out of it in the sense of where I am at now. And I also say that has got a lot to do with having someone in my life who cared about me enough and loved me enough to listen to what I'd been through. So like I say, it's like there's nothing I can do about the past. Those people are gone. Those situations happened. We are here now, and it doesn't matter anymore, because I never managed to answer those questions when I was asking them all the time. But, here I am now, and yeah.
I was about to say, does it even matter anymore when I asked you, and I stopped myself because I've also reached that point where it doesn't really matter anymore. It's not important for me to answer that anymore. But also, it's something I grappled with for most of my life. Why me? Why did it happen?
Yeah. It's not our identity anymore, Sinta. And I think if we wallow too much in the why and what happened, if we keep on focusing on all those things that happened in the past, we kind of like remain stuck in that identity, and it becomes very difficult to move beyond it, or even to allow ourselves to be open and transparent with people who actually have a real desire to say, you are worthy of someone caring. Tell me what happened.
Yes.
And I think even just in that authentic space of being comforted, of an authentic, sincere caring and desire to know what you went through and be there for you, that is an incredible part of the healing process as well. So I would just like to encourage, whoever's listening to this, who is maybe in that space of stuck in the identity of the past, that can be a very debilitating and soul-destroying place to stay in. And I just believe that there does come a time where there is someone that goes, you know what, stop. I really want to know what's going on. Stop, breathe. I genuinely care. I'm not here to rape you, to hit you, to manipulate you. I just really care. And that's the mind-boggling thing when that happens. It's like, no, there's hidden agenda here. All the alarms are going off. It's like, what do you want from me? Nothing comes for free.
It's too good to be true. And it is. We are all worthy of being loved unconditionally. So it's beautiful, and I'm so grateful that you are there now, and that your journey has come to this. This is such a beautiful get up and grow story, and that's why I do these interviews, is for for people like you to share their story of how life has knocked you down over and over and over, and how you got up every time. And here you are today with an immense a lot of wisdom that you've gained, and so much growth that has happened with you. You really got up and grew, and I'm grateful, and I want to commend you for having come this far. And thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us. And in conclusion, I want to ask you if you can give a golden nugget of advice to young women, like you were in the stormy years in your teenage years, when you ran away, when you felt like you couldn't take this any longer, and you ran away and you almost ended up in a situation that was worse. What can you say to another young woman out there who finds herself in that kind of situation?
The most important thing is to understand you are not the problem. No matter what's being done to you, you are not the disease. And I would really like to encourage young women to speak to someone who truly is trustworthy, who, obviously we need to look at people and see, can they be trusted? But I believe there is someone, and to share that with them, and not to keep quiet because you think no one's going to listen, or you the problem, or you made this happen. No, these perpetrators premeditated what they are doing, and it's not your fault. You're not the disease. And just not to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not to shut the rest of the world off and get completely sucked into that damaged self-identity of being that broken person, but to rather reach out to the people who are wanting to listen. Don't keep quiet. Wherever possible, do not keep quiet.
Yes, that's beautiful. Please reach out, reach out. There is always someone somewhere out there willing to listen and to help. And there are people out there like myself who's not afraid to stand up for you. So please reach out. Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Michelle, this has been such a privilege. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to have had this conversation with you. And I know this is going to be very valuable to everybody who watches this or listens to the podcast. I wish
Wonderful. Thank you.
The very best.
Thank you, Sinta. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I really hope it touches the hearts. It speaks to people and they do reach out to you. So thank you so much for the opportunity.